Elvis Presley died today. He was 42. Apparently it was a heart attack.
It was horrible. Yeah, it's an experience nobody wants to ever experience. Never.
Behind every chart-topping hit and iconic album lies a story of triumph and tragedy. Discover the untold narratives of 20 musicians whose lives were cut short, leaving a lasting mark on music history. 20. Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley's impact on music and popular culture remains unparalleled. With his charismatic charm, boyish good looks, and a voice that could effortlessly shift between country, rock and roll, and gospel, he became the undisputed king of rock and roll in the mid-1950s. His electrifying performances, complete with his infamous hip-swiveling moves, captivated a generation of teenagers and transformed the music scene forever. Beginning his meteoric rise with chart-topping hits like Hound Dog, Heartbreak Hotel, and Don't Be Cruel, Elvis quickly became a cultural phenomenon. His music resonated deeply, crossing racial and cultural barriers, and defining the sound of a new era in American music. In 1958, Elvis interrupted his skyrocketing career to honor his Army draft order, a move that didn't derail his success. Thanks to a backlog of recorded hits and a memorable appearance on Frank Sinatra's television special in 1960, Elvis remained firmly in the public eye. The 1960s saw Elvis diversify into acting, starring in a series of films that showcased his charm and musical talent. Despite his film commitments, Elvis returned to his musical roots with a groundbreaking NBC special in 1968, famously known as the '68 Comeback Special. This marked a resurgence in his career, paving the way for his iconic Las Vegas residencies. While the 1970s brought further musical success, it was also a period of personal turmoil for Elvis. His divorce from Priscilla Presley, coupled with health issues and a reliance on prescription medications, marred his later years. As Bono once reflected, the Vegas period is underrated. By that point, Elvis was clearly not in control of his own life, and there is this incredible pathos. Elvis Presley's tragic death in 1977 at his Graceland estate shocked the world. Officially attributed to heart disease, speculation persists that drug use may have contributed to his untimely demise. Despite his troubled final years, Elvis's influence endures. From tribute artists to posthumous chart toppers like A Little Less Conversation, Elvis Presley continues to reign as the king of rock and roll, his legacy cemented in music history. 19. Ronnie VanZant. Ronnie VanZant's legacy is deeply intertwined with the rise and tragedy of Lynyrd Skynyrd, one of Southern rock's most iconic bands. As the charismatic lead singer, VanZant propelled Lynyrd Skynyrd to fame with anthems like Sweet Home Alabama and the epic ballad Freebird. Tragically, at the peak of their success, the band faced a devastating blow. In October 1977, while en route to a concert in Baton Rouge, their plane ran out of fuel and crash-landed near Gillsburg, Mississippi. VanZant, along with guitarist Steve Gaines, Gaines' sister Cassie, who sang backup, and several others, including the band's assistant road manager, the pilot, and co-pilot, lost their lives in the crash. VanZant, who had once ominously predicted he wouldn't live past 30, was just shy of his 30th birthday. The crash profoundly shook the music world, and Lynyrd Skynyrd disbanded in the wake of the tragedy. However, a decade later, surviving members, along with Johnny VanZant, Ronnie's younger brother, reunited to carry on the band's legacy. Over the years, Lynyrd Skynyrd has continued to tour and record with various lineup changes, but always honoring the spirit and music that Ronnie VanZant helped create. 18. Bob Marley. Bob Marley, along with his band The Wailers, revolutionized music by blending reggae, ska, and rocksteady into a genre-defining sound. His influence stretched far beyond music, embodying the Rastafari movement with his trademark dreadlocks and spiritual lyrics. Marley gained international fame when Eric Clapton covered his song I Shot the Sheriff, bringing reggae to a global audience. Despite his rising fame, Marley faced a personal health crisis in 1977 when he was diagnosed with acral lentiginous melanoma, a rare form of skin cancer unrelated to sun exposure. Initially advised to amputate his toe where the cancerous lesion was found, Marley opted for a less invasive procedure to remove the nail and nail bed. Continuing his musical career despite declining health, Marley's cancer eventually spread, leading to his untimely death at the age of 36 in Miami. His legacy, however, remains immortal. His 1984 posthumous compilation album Legend became the best-selling reggae album of all time, solidifying his status as a cultural icon whose music continues to inspire and resonate worldwide. 17. Karen Carpenter. Karen Carpenter is remembered not only for her remarkable vocals, but also as one of the few female drummers hailed among the most talented of all time. Alongside her brother Richard, she formed the iconic duo The Carpenters, achieving multiple chart-topping hits on the Billboard Hot 100, including classics like We've Only Just Begun and They Long to Be Close to You. Despite her musical success, Carpenter battled severe body image issues from a young age, leading to a dangerous cycle of dieting. By 1975, she had reached a dangerously low weight of 91 pounds. In an era when eating disorders were not widely understood or discussed, Carpenter sought help and appeared to be on the path to recovery by 1983 after gaining some weight. Tragically, Carpenter's health took a devastating turn when she collapsed at her parents' home and passed away shortly after arriving at the hospital. Her death at the age of 32 was attributed to heart failure caused by complications from anorexia nervosa. 16. Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison remains an enduring figure in rock history, captivating fans with his charismatic stage presence and poetic lyrics as the frontman of The Doors. His allure lay in his enigmatic persona and his ability to meld desert trips and Greek mythology into the fabric of psychedelic rock. Morrison lived the lifestyle he sang about, fast and intense. While LSD was prevalent in the counterculture, alcohol became Morrison's primary vice. By 1969, just 2 years after The Doors soared to fame, his addiction began to visibly affect him. Concerts often descended into chaotic scenes, culminating in a notorious arrest in Florida for indecent exposure. In 1971, Morrison relocated to Paris with his girlfriend Pamela Courson, seeking respite from the tumult of fame and legal troubles. Tragically, it was in Paris where Courson discovered Morrison lifeless in their bathtub. Officially, his death at the age of 27 was attributed to heart failure, though no autopsy was conducted. Reflecting on his untimely passing, Doors bandmate Robbie Krieger lamented Morrison's unfulfilled potential, saying he would have never stopped making music. Morrison's legacy endures, his influence transcending his brief life. His mysterious and rebellious spirit continues to captivate new generations of music enthusiasts. In a haunting parallel, Pamela Courson herself passed away in 1974, also at the age of 27, succumbing to a heroin overdose. 15. Patsy Klein. Patsy Klein, renowned for her captivating voice and cross-genre appeal, cemented her place as one of the 20th century's greatest vocalists. With a unique blend of country soul and urban sophistication, she charmed audiences with hits like I Fall to Pieces, Walkin' After Midnight, and the iconic Crazy, penned by Willie Nelson. Each song showcased her ability to navigate between honky-tonk ballads and lush, orchestrated pop standards. Tragically, Klein's life was cut short in 1963 when the plane she was traveling in crashed near Camden, Tennessee. Despite her untimely death, her posthumous releases, including Sweet Dreams of You and Faded Love, continued to captivate listeners and ensured her enduring legacy. In 1973, she made history as the first solo female artist inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, a testament to her lasting impact on the genre. Klein's influence extends beyond her music. Her portrayal in films like the Loretta Lynn biopic Coal Miner's Daughter and Jessica Lange's depiction in Sweet Dreams brought her story to new audiences, further elevating her status. Her greatest hits album remains a bestseller, surpassing 10 million copies sold and setting records for chart longevity in the Guinness World Records. Today, Nashville pays homage to her with the Patsy Klein Museum, a shrine celebrating her career milestones and personal artifacts. More than 50 years after her passing, artists such as Reba McEntire, Casey Musgraves, and LeAnn Rimes continue to draw inspiration from her timeless style and vocal prowess, reaffirming Klein's enduring influence on country music and beyond. 14. John Lennon. John Lennon, a pivotal figure in music history as a member of the Beatles, emerged from a period of seclusion in the late 1970s with renewed creativity and optimism. After devoting several years to family life with wife Yoko Ono and their son Sean, Lennon re-entered the public eye in late 1980, eager to share his latest album, Double Fantasy. The album, a collaborative effort with Ono, marked a return to form, receiving critical acclaim reminiscent of his earlier solo work like Imagine. Just like Starting Over, the album's opening track captured Lennon's hopeful outlook on the future. On December 8, 1980, he spent the day engaging with radio stations, posing for Rolling Stone's cover, and working on a remix at the record plant. Tragically, upon returning home, Lennon encountered Mark David Chapman, a disturbed fan who fatally shot him. The news of Lennon's death sent shockwaves around the world, with Howard Cosell announcing it on Monday Night Football. Mourners gathered at the scene of the shooting, expressing grief and singing songs of peace. Reflecting on Lennon's impact, Tom Petty highlighted how the Beatles had transcended mere entertainment, becoming symbols of social change and authenticity. John Lennon meant everything, Petty recalled in a 2000 interview with Rolling Stone. When I was young and seeing the Beatles performing on TV, they were the first ones who weren't just saying showbiz banter. They'd actually say something. He was a great role model for my whole generation. 13. Buddy Holly. Buddy Holly, a pioneering figure in rock and roll, epitomized the youthful spirit and innovation of 1950s music culture. As a member of the Crickets and later as a solo artist, Holly popularized the use of two guitars, bass, and drums in rock bands, influencing generations of musicians. His hits like That'll Be the Day, Not Fade Away, and It's So Easy became anthems of the era, shaping the genre with their distinctive sound and energetic performances. Holly's impact extended far beyond his own era, influencing future legends like John Lennon and Paul McCartney of the Beatles. McCartney acknowledged Holly's influence on his songwriting, reflecting on how he and Lennon emulated Holly's style in their early compositions. This admiration and emulation ultimately contributed to the formation of their iconic band. During Holly's rise, Ritchie Valens emerged as a trailblazer in the Spanish-speaking rock and roll movement. With his breakout hit La Bamba, Valens became the first Latino musician to achieve mainstream success in rock and roll. His energetic performances and cross-cultural appeal inspired a new generation of Latino artists, leaving an enduring mark on the music industry. J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson, known for his comedic flair and hit songs like Chantilly Lace, also contributed to the vibrant rock and roll scene of the 1950s. As a songwriter, Richardson penned George Jones's first #1 country hit, White Lightning, showcasing his versatility and talent beyond performing. Tragically, these three influential artists, Holly, Valens, and Richardson, met their untimely end in a tragic plane crash on February 3, 1959. They were part of the Winter Dance Party tour, which faced logistical challenges with malfunctioning buses and grueling travel conditions across the Midwest. Seeking respite from these challenges, Holly chartered a small plane to their next destination, unaware of the impending tragedy. Shortly after takeoff, the plane crashed into a cornfield near Clear Lake, Iowa, claiming the lives of Holly, Valens, Richardson, and the pilot. This catastrophic event, immortalized as "The Day the Music Died" by Don McLean in his iconic song American Pie, shook the music world to its core. It marked a profound loss of talent and potential, leaving an indelible void in rock and roll history. 12. Billie Holiday. Billie Holiday remains one of the most revered jazz singers of the swing era, celebrated for her distinctive voice and emotive performances. Her interpretations of classics like "What a Little Moonlight Can Do," "Summertime," "Strange Fruit," and "God Bless the Child" captured the hearts of audiences and cemented her status as a musical icon. Holiday broke barriers as one of the first African-American female singers to collaborate with a white band, notably joining Artie Shaw's orchestra. Her performances, including a memorable concert at Carnegie Hall, drew sold-out crowds and earned critical acclaim, showcasing her talent and versatility. Behind the scenes, however, Holiday's life was marked by personal struggles. She faced abusive relationships, wrestled with a challenging temperament, and battled substance abuse throughout her career. These issues culminated in periods of turmoil, including a brief incarceration. In 1959, Holiday's health took a severe downturn when she was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver. During a hospitalization for her condition, she was controversially arrested on narcotics charges and handcuffed to her hospital bed, an indignity that underscored the injustices she faced. Tragically, Holiday passed away at the age of 44 from pulmonary edema and heart failure, directly resulting from her deteriorating liver condition. 11. Nat King Cole. With one of the most unforgettable voices in music history, Cole fought racism to become a Grammy-winning singer, pianist, songwriter, actor, and host of his own television series, the first African-American man to do so. He cemented his place in entertainment history with classics like The Christmas Song, Mona Lisa, Too Young, and of course, Unforgettable. He began having health problems and was diagnosed with advanced lung cancer in late 1964. He finished his last album and, despite treatment efforts, passed away at the age of 45, less than 2 months after his diagnosis. 10. Jimi Hendrix. Between the 1967 spring release of Hendrix's bombastic first studio LP, Are You Experienced, and his death 3 short years later, he became the guitar god to which all other guitar gods would be measured. Most impressive, though, was how his talent just seemed to pour right out of him. His playing was effortless, Rage Against the Machine's Tom Morello once said. There's not 1 minute of his recorded career that feels like he's working hard at it. It feels like it's all flowing through him. He was capable of hard-rocking pyrotechnic displays, both musically and literally, such as when he set his guitar on fire at Monterey, and he could also play the most touching meditations like Castles Made of Sand. His final album, Band of Gypsies, even found him exploring funk. A year after he played a searing, psychedelic rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner at Woodstock, he was found dead. The artist, who was known for his drug use, had ostensibly choked on his own vomit after taking barbiturates. Officials deemed it accidental, but did not rule out suicide as a possibility. He's since remained an inspiration to several generations of six-string players thanks to a steady stream of posthumous releases, documentaries, and films about him. I think the reason musicians love Hendrix's playing so much is that the language of it was so native to his head and heart, John Mayer once said. He had a secret relationship with playing the guitar, and though it was incredibly technical and based in theory, it was his theory. All you heard was the color. The math is what's been applied ever since. 9. Janis Joplin. Joplin was the first woman rock star, bushwhacking through a button-down and sexist culture with no script. Just desire, pain, and an astonishing white light vocal attack. And a mighty appetite for drugs and alcohol. As a teen, she fled Port Arthur, Texas, where she'd been routinely humiliated by hometown peers, arriving in San Francisco just in time for hippie culture's blossoming. She became a star with Big Brother and the Holding Company in the wake of a spectacular Monterey Pop Festival appearance, and soon broke off to do her own thing. She formed a band and soon completed her first solo LP, Got Dem Old Cosmic Blues Again, Mama. Working on a follow-up in 1970 after a summer that included a media fiasco around her high school reunion and a tumultuous relationship with a 21-year-old coke dealer, she overdosed on heroin alone in room number 105 of the Landmark Motor Hotel in Hollywood just 2 weeks after Jimi Hendrix's death. Though she hadn't fully completed work on it, the posthumous Pearl, featuring Me and Bobby McGee, her only #1 single, and Mercedes-Benz, the last song she ever recorded, would be her great crossover success. She held nothing back. She went to the edge every time she opened her mouth, said Roseanne Cash, whose first ever album purchase was Pearl. 8. Prince. One of the most singularly talented artists to ever sign a record contract, Prince produced, arranged, composed, and performed all the music on his debut album, For You, which came out when he was 19 and would seamlessly hop from instrument to instrument throughout the rest of his career with phenomenal ease. He became a hitmaker in the late 70s and early 80s thanks to his proactive, sexually charged image and singles that could straddle the pop, R&B, and dance charts like I Wanna Be Your Lover, Uptown, and Controversy. He became ready for prime time with 1999, an album that showcased his multiracial, multi-gender band The Revolution and became a megastar with Purple Rain, the movie and its diamond-certified soundtrack whose hits included Let's Go Crazy, the epic title track, and When Doves Cry. When Doves Cry is one of the most radical #1 songs of the past 25 years, Questlove once said. Here's a song with no bass line in it, hardly any music, yet it still had such an influence. When Doves Cry is a precursor to the Neptunes' one-note funk grind, a masterpiece of song with just a drum machine and very little melody. With his falsetto, flamboyant look, and ability to play a wide range of instruments, Prince was one of the most original and diverse artists of all time, with a number of accolades including an Oscar for Best Original Song Score for Purple Rain, 1984. 1 week before his death, he performed his final show despite having the flu. He was later hospitalized, but left against medical advice. He was scheduled to meet with a doctor regarding pain management and opioid addiction, but was found unresponsive in his home. One of the most influential artists of all time died at the age of 57 from an accidental overdose of fentanyl. 7. Whitney Houston. Houston is the only performer to have 7 consecutive #1 hits on the Billboard 100 and was the recipient of 6 Grammys, a record 11 Billboard Music Awards, and an Emmy. Despite her success and accolades, the voice struggled with drug and alcohol addiction. She was found unconscious in her hotel bathtub, submerged and unresponsive. A month after her death, it was reported that Houston accidentally drowned due to drug use, including cocaine. A decade after her death, her music is just as popular, with her video for I Will Always Love You surpassing 1 billion views on YouTube. She is the first solo artist from the 20th century to accomplish this feat. 6. John Denver. An Emmy and Grammy-winning artist of many talents, Denver, with his soothing vocals and acoustic guitar, was one of America's best-selling crossover artists, with chart toppers like Take Me Home Country Roads and Rocky Mountain High. Denver also had a love of flying. However, due to a drunken driving charge, his medical certification to fly had been revoked. He nonetheless took off in a light plane he had recently purchased and crashed into Monterey Bay. He had no drugs or alcohol in his system. It was found that he was unable to switch fuel tanks due to an unusual design. He was the only one on board and died from multiple blunt force trauma at the age of 53. 5. Freddie Mercury. Mercury's voice would be a thing of legend were it not recorded. With seemingly little effort, the Queen frontman could shift from crooning like a balladeer to snarling from his gut at a moment's notice. See Killer Queen. But he's also important for bringing a sense of drama to hard rock, encouraging his bandmates to sing operatically on Bohemian Rhapsody, show off their senses of humor, note the kazoo in Seaside Rendezvous and the whole I Want to Break Free video where they dressed in drag, and generally shoot for writing the most bombastic and grandiose songs they could. We Are the Champions. On the stage, he was a flamboyant, indefatigable presence who could get tens of thousands of people to clap their hands along to songs like We Will Rock You and Radio Gaga. I love the way Freddie performed, My Chemical Romance frontman Gerard Way once said. He would strike amazing poses. Maybe he practiced them in front of a mirror, but he wasn't pretending to be somebody else. That was him telling the world, this is who I am. Despite his big persona, Mercury kept his offstage life private, rarely granting interviews, though that didn't keep him from becoming an LGBT icon. In the early 90s, rumors began circulating that he had contracted AIDS, which he confirmed just 2 days before his death of bronchial pneumonia, a side effect of his disease. 4. Ricky Nelson. With a popularity that rivaled Elvis's, Nelson first found fame as part of his parents' sitcom The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, and used that series to help launch his music career. His Poor Little Fool was the very first #1 hit on Billboard's Top 100, and he eventually charted 63 songs on the legendary pop chart. His career eventually waned, but in 1985 he embarked on a comeback tour and bought a private plane for traveling. The plane, which had experienced ongoing mechanical issues, crash-landed, reportedly due to a fire from a faulty heater. Nelson and 6 passengers, including his girlfriend, were killed, while the 2 pilots were able to escape. 3. Marvin Gaye. One of the most impassioned voices in popular music, Gaye swiftly ascended the pop charts in the 60s with a string of catchy, moving singles. Ain't That Peculiar, You're All I Need to Get By, the enduring I Heard It Through the Grapevine, and established himself as a hitmaker. In 1971, though, he dug deep into himself to create soul music's Sgt. Pepper, What's Going On, a carefully composed plea for compassion and humanity as the Vietnam War raged on. What's Going On is the most profound musical statement in my lifetime, Smokey Robinson once said. It never gets dated. I still remember when I would go by Marvin's house and he was working on it. He would say, "Smoke, this album is being written by God and I'm just the instrument that he's writing it through." Within a couple of years, he explored sexier and generally lighter terrain, scoring #1 hits with Let's Get It On and Got to Give It Up, the song that inspired the feel of Robin Thicke's embattled Blurred Lines. 1982's Sexual Healing missed the top spot, stalling at #3. Toward the end of the 70s, though, his personal life began falling apart. He divorced his wife Anna Gordy, the sister of Motown founder Barry, and he filed for bankruptcy, eventually moving to Europe to avoid the IRS. He was also battling depression and a cocaine addiction, and in the year of his death, he threatened suicide multiple times. Despite this, he did not die by his own hand. His father, a preacher, shot him at point-blank range one day before Marvin's 45th birthday following an argument. 2. Otis Reading. Otis Reading's incredible June 1967 performance at the Monterey Pop Festival, which brought soul music to an astonished and electrified white rock audience, was a landmark boundary-breaking moment in pop music history. Just months later, on December 10th, Reading died in a plane crash near Madison, Wisconsin, where he was scheduled to perform that night. At the time, he was wrapping up the recording of Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay, the folk soul monument that turned the racial and social promise of that Monterey performance into one of the most powerful songs of all time. Reading had already established himself as a vibrant force in R&B thanks to hits like Try a Little Tenderness, Pain in My Heart, and his hard-hitting cover of the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction. At the time of his passing, his art was entering a new phase of passion and possibility, making his tragic death that much more heartbreaking. Elvis was the king of rock, said Steve Cropper of Booker T and the MGs, who was left with the task of mixing the final version of Dock of the Bay after Reading died. Otis was the king of soul. Had he lived, I think he would have been king of them all. 1. Sam Cooke. Born in Mississippi and raised in Chicago, Cooke was an essential architect of soul music who bridged gospel and pop to influence generations of singers. He rose to gospel stardom during the 50s as a member of the Soul Stirrers, then crossed over with the 1957 classic You Send Me, which went to #1. He followed that success with a string of hits that combined smooth enunciation and intimate phrasing with bluesy drive and urban authenticity. He was a top 40 staple throughout the early 60s, but his career was cut short on December 11, 1964, when he was killed in Los Angeles in a still contested incident. A hotel manager claims she shot the singer in self-defense after he'd allegedly tried to rape a 22-year-old woman and then turned on her. The coroner ruled it a justifiable homicide, but the circumstances around the shooting remain murky. 11 days after his death, Cooke's greatest song, A Change Is Gonna Come, was released. Based on his own experience being turned away from a whites-only motel in Louisiana, it became a civil rights anthem and one of the landmark records of the 60s. Sam Cooke reached down deep with pure soul, Van Morrison wrote in Rolling Stone when Cooke was named #4 in this magazine's list of the 100 greatest singers of all time. He had the rare ability to do gospel the way it's supposed to be. He made it real, clean, direct. Gospel drove Sam Cooke through his greatest songs the same way it did for Ray Charles, who came first, and Otis Reading. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the lives of these music legends. If you found their stories as compelling as I did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out my other videos for more fascinating insights into music history.